Dr. Richard Garfield is most famous for his work on the original trading card game Magic the Gathering, but he has also made a plethora of exciting games since, from Robo Rally to King of Tokyo. Dr. Garfield reached out to me to discuss his newest game, Half-Truth Second Guess, a trivia game developed alongside Jeopardy champion and host Ken Jennings. Dr. Garfield, thank you for joining me this evening. You're most famous for the creation of Magic the Gathering, which is the world's first trading card game, and what's considered by many to be the most complex game in human history.
I guess when you look at it from counting all the cards, yeah, it might be up there in complexity.
All right, yeah, I think there's, last I checked, about 30,000 individual rules text cards available right now, with many more on the way. I know that you aren't as heavily involved in the development of the game anymore, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on the increasing prevalence of the Universe Beyond sets that are coming from other IPs outside of Magic the Gathering, such as the Marvel Transformers and the recently announced SpongeBob SquarePants sets.
As you said, I'm not really plugged in right now. I usually take several years off from Magic to get some of my other work done, and it's been about 10 years, maybe a little more, since I worked with Magic. In principle, going outside of the Magic IP is fine. I tend not to be a big fan of big IPs, so those don't do anything for me. But in principle, it's fine. Like, for instance, when I originally did Arabian Nights, that was an external IP. It wasn't tied in. It was meant to be an homage to Arabian Nights. I'm a big fan of Arabian Nights. And so this idea has been with us certainly since the start. It's just a matter of which settings you choose.
If you could pick any IP for any Universe Beyond set or Secret Lair, what would yours be?
Two answers to that. As I said, I tend to go towards public domain areas. So for Cthulhu, for example, would be something that I would be drawn to. For not public domain, I'm a big fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender. That would be something to break me out of my negative view on IPs.
So other recent changes that we've seen in that game are the replacement of set boosters and draft boosters with play boosters. I know that you've mentioned in the past that draft is your favorite format, and I was just wondering if you had a chance to play any drafts with the new play boosters, and if so, what was the experience? How does it compare?
Yeah, I have not had a chance. The last Magic that I played was with my boys, who are 7 years old. They're just learning the game. They got some of the Assassin's Creed cards, and so we were just playing around with the starter decks. So that's my most recent experience. The draft sets sound exciting. I still am a big fan of draft in many games, but Magic in particular.
Well, in addition to Magic, you've also developed several other games, including Robot Rally and King of Tokyo, which I've got a copy of on my shelf behind me. And I believe you are also a playtester for 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons?
Yeah, that's right.
Half-Truth was your first trivia game. What was it that inspired you to tackle that genre?
Half-Truth was my first trivia game. It wasn't my first party game. I did What Were You Thinking and Hive Mind. Half-Truth in particular was inspired by the book Brainiac by Ken Jennings. Brainiac really opened my eyes to what was appealing about trivia. I had not been viewing it through the same lens that Ken does, and I did not see it as this very broad pastime which everybody can participate in, sharing and contrasting their nuggets of knowledge. I saw it as something that was very specialized. And this is partially because most of my encounter with it at that time was through Trivia Pursuit, which can favor trivia experts more than the casual players. Since then, I've been more exposed to pub trivia inside puzzle hunts and things like that, and so I've gotten a broader exposure. Now, Half-Truth came about because after reading this, I really wanted to see a game which maximized that quality, the quality that anybody can play and has a chance, and has a chance also to shine when there are special areas of knowledge came up. And that's what led me to Half Truth.
Ken Jennings is probably the most famous individual man in game show history, maybe next to Alex Trebek, who I believe he took over for. You yourself are very possibly the most famous game designer in human history. What brought you together in order to make this game?
His book was foundational to me, and so there was nothing I wanted more than to be able to share that with him in whatever capacity I could. So the game, after the game was designed mechanically, I invited him over and we played with a number of guests. And we played 2 games, and the second game he lost. It was surprising because my guests, they were solid trivia players, but they were no cans. And he understood that the reason for this was because the mechanics really supported a much broader audience than a lot of trivia games. I think there was a good chance that part of it was the game component of it. There's a lot of press your luck, and it takes you a little bit to sort of understand what the payoffs and values of pressing your luck are. But yeah, he was in after that. So that's how we got involved with Ken.
I'm really curious how much each of you contributed to the development of the game. You said that you laid out the framework. Was he, in the end, providing most of the questions in the final version, or was it more organic?
He provided a lot of questions, and I think his biggest contribution was style and educating us as to what makes a good distribution of question categories, things like that. But in the end, I think there's a good chance he submitted the most questions. If not, it was very close. I would have been the contender. And then other people in Three Donkeys, which is my company, contributed them, and also people in Nighthawk. My wife, actually, Coney, contributed quite a number of questions and was really helped us explore the special qualities of these half-truth questions, because the half-truth questions are pretty special. They are multiple choice questions in which half the answers are correct, hence half-truth. So there's 3 correct, 3 incorrect. And Coney put together the first set of cards that I could actually play with, because until that moment I had made all the cards. And so that evening when Ken played, I did not play since I wrote the questions. And the first game that I did play, which used the cards that Coney made, she included a question which was brilliant. It was, which of these are poisonous mushrooms? And the 3 answers that were true were poisonous mushrooms, destroying an angel, for example. And the 3 answers that were false were magic cards, blinding an angel, and I think various phallics. And I did not recognize that. I recognized one of them was a magic card, but a lot of magic cards came from real life, so I didn't deduce what was going on. But that question led us to make a whole category of questions where the negative answers had a theme. And it really is quite a nice innovation, because it makes it so that people who don't know anything about the positive part might get some extra insight on the negative part. So, for example, we had one which was Pokemon opposite cats. So we had somebody who knew nothing about the cats get all the correct answers.
So going back to something you talked about before, trivia games can often be a really hard sell. I remember there were certain people I wouldn't play trivia games against because they were basically walking encyclopedias. So a lot of times they favor players with either very, very broad knowledge or very specific knowledge of the game's genre. For example, Trivial Pursuit, Harry Potter edition. So why does Half-Truth appeal to a much larger audience here?
There's a number of reasons why Half-Truth has the breadth of appeal that it has. The breadth of playability, I guess, is what I should say. Well, first of all, half the questions are correct, and you get the lion's share of points if you just get one of them right. So even if you're guessing, you got a 50-50 chance. Now, of course, that's not super interesting, but if you are guessing, but questions are structured so that you can often eliminate one, or you can get some intuitive sense of which one is correct. Now, if you've got extensive knowledge of something, you can try to get a second and third answer and get extra points, but this isn't like exponentially more points, even though it is exponentially harder. It's just a little more. So this is where the trivia experts, they get to leverage the knowledge, not to a ridiculous degree that will overshadow everyone. Now, the type of questions we have also is important. There are a lot of questions here which they aren't intended for anybody to know the answer. They are intended for you to be able to get a sense of the answer. So, for example, there's in the original, there were real breakfast cereals. Now, the breakfast cereals that we chose were not breakfast cereals you would have experienced growing up. They were not something that your parents probably would have. They were things like Dwarfies. Dwarfies was a real cereal from, I think, Wisconsin. And essentially, nobody would recognize that. So how do you play that question? The trivia expert has no advantage there, but everybody's got this cultural awareness, and they can weigh which one of these cereals seems plausible, and they also might be able to get the negative clues in some other way and eliminate it. So there's a bunch of questions here which fall way outside which one of these sports people did such and such a thing, where the trivia experts are going to nail that immediately, or which one of these won the Academy Award. Those are sort of rote trivia where the trivia experts are going to have the advantage, and there are a few of those, but really there's many more of these ones where people look at them and they say, I have no idea. And then they begin to think about it, and they begin to figure out how to get some hook into the problem to give them a little better chance, or maybe even figure it out. So yeah, it's both the mechanics and the choice of questions. You also brought up something which I've been adamant about avoiding, which is special versions that focus on movies or focus on sports or focus on The Simpsons. I find that outside of Half-Truth, all my experience with those have been, they make good gifts, but it's really hard to get them to the table because you have to have a very specialized group. And some of the people are coming into this unwilling. And it's really hard to design them because you don't know what level of difficulty set at. So I'm much more interested in keeping the trivia general, where you just have no idea what's going to come next. And it might be out of your comfort zone, but hopefully there'll be something you can get some advantage on with the questions.
Okay, so we're probably not looking at a Olympic sports in the 80s edition of Half-Truth.
No, but, it does remind me, one of the there's so much fun knowledge out there, and people sitting around trying to figure out which is the least improbable answers is a lot of fun.
But I believe that your newest game, which is Half-Truth Second Guess, which I've got a copy of behind me, but I just received it today. I haven't had a chance to play it yet. I believe it's your first game that you've done as a sequel to another of your games, discounting the spin-offs of King of Tokyo. So why do you decide to work on a sequel to Half-Truth instead of a expansion?
So, expansions have a problem, which is that they are only purchased by people who already got the original, and it becomes a smaller and smaller audience. It is a much sounder practice, if you can get away with it, to make something which is standalone. So that's one of the reasons why you've got a few. And Ticket to Ride has a few expansions which are proper expansions, but most of them are standalone. They give you a new board, give you rules twists, and you're good to go. And that way, anybody who's interested in getting involved with the game can start anywhere, and they just have to make sure they haven't got the same one they've already got. So we always knew that we wanted to do more questions for Half-Truth. Mm-hmm. The idea of making it so it was a standalone expansion, I mean, if you can do that, it's just always better. So
what I'd like to know is if you've got any other projects that are currently in development that you can tell us about.
Sure. Yeah, I always have a lot of projects going on, and they usually have such long development times that I kind of lose track of them. Coming up soon will be a game called Final Titan, which is a crazy free-for-all battle where you draft off some warriors, and then and then play sort of a King of the Hill type mechanic that I designed with the folks that worked on Mindbug. And so that group that did Mindbug is doing that. Speaking of which, there's also a Mindbug King of Tokyo version and a King of Tokyo Mindbug version. There's also a couple of digital games. There's Vanguard Exiles, which has a demo on Steam. It's an auto battler. And Chaos Agents by a company named Popularian, which is open for alpha testing right now. An auto battler royale. That's been a lot of fun to work on as well.
Maybe we'll get a chance to talk about them again when they're ready to come out here in the near future.
Absolutely.
Meanwhile, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me, Dr. Garfield. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me, sir.
Oh, thanks for the interest. I hope you enjoy the game.
Thank you so much. Half-Truth Second Guess is currently fully funded on Kickstarter, but I've got an advanced copy to preview. As a new channel just getting off the ground, I appreciate it when you hit that subscribe button, comment whether or not you're going to pick up the game, or just share it with your friends. Until next time, alola.